Aye. Hello and welcome to the third in our series of human resource topics that we are working on. We have our expert here again today, Karen Hughey, and I'll let her do a short introduction. Most of you have been here before, so you kind of know who she is. Today we are talking about retaining employees. Once you have them, how to keep them, so that's important. And that is about it. You guys know, and I will put in chat, we have one-on-one consulting available with Karen. Being as today is the last seminar, I will be getting those to her to start scheduling after today. So if you've already reached out to me, then you're on the list. But if you are looking for a one-on-one appointment, and don't be shy. This doesn't have to be, I have 30 employees and I need help. This can be, I'm getting ready to hire my first employee. This can be, so please, please, please reach out and take advantage of these wonderful things that we've been able to do with some special CARES Act funding. And we do want to thank the CARES Act for our ability to do a lot of these great things. So that is my spiel. I'm going to hand it off to Karen. I will be watching the chat for anyone who has questions but doesn't feel comfortable unmuting. Just put it over there and I'll get it out to the group. And I think that's it. Karen, take it away.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it, Michelle. It's good to see some familiar faces back again. So I'll make my introduction really short. My background has been in human resources for over 20 years, working primarily with large companies to begin my career. So I'll bring a lot of examples from very large, very conservative companies like Chrysler Financial, OptumRx, but then pivoted into working in the HR consulting area. Then for what I considered a small company at the time, you may not, it was about 150 employees, but compared to 380,000 that we had at one point when Daimler-Benz bought us at Chrysler, 150 was kind of small. And now I work with companies from startups to growth companies that don't yet need or want a full-time HR person, but they appreciate that, especially today, employee engagement is so important, and creating that great workplace, and how do I do everything right in the HR world? Because I'm so busy growing my business. Hopefully I've gotten to that point where you're working on it instead of in it. And I just need somebody else to help me with some of these HR processes, policies, so that I can make sure I'm doing the things the right way there and can grow the business. So today, this is the last of the three, as Michelle mentioned, one of my favorite topics. It's about retaining employees. So for those of you who came to the first workshop, second workshop, we talked about the hiring process. You're going to see a little bit of a review in this again today. As I mentioned the other day, that is one way that we start to retain people. So I'm going to focus on two primary areas, and this, it's not one of my favorite PowerPoints, but I have a whole lot of information in here because Michelle will email it out to you again. And it's got a lot of different ideas and suggestions for things that you can do and things that you can start doing today to start retaining those employees. So the two areas we're going to focus on are developing that employee engagement and then taking a look at employees from a best practices and retention perspective. So we'll start in here again, there we go. First, focusing on the employee engagement. Again, these are some things that you can do today. And so I have a little bit of definitions here. You know, we're working with the Small Business Development Center that's aligned with UMKC, and I'm also an adjunct instructor, different school, but you know, I like to have a few definitions. So employee engagement. Let me ask you first.
Your screen is not sharing, Karen. I don't know.
Well, you know what? Yeah, I needed to do that and I forgot. I just got going and jumped.
Okay. I figured you were talking about definitions. There might be something.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. There. I just got excited. I started talking. So, show of hands or thumbs up. How many of you are familiar with the term employee engagement? Yep. Okay. Perfect. Good. All right. Well, here's some different definitions, and I like that first one, Gallup. Gallup is a big research company. How many people are familiar with Gallup? Some of you, Miranda. Okay. Good. Really like Gallup. So if you're ever looking for more information, if you find some information from Gallup, you know it's going to be good, reliable information. And interestingly, they're just up the road in Omaha. They're really not too far from us here in the Kansas City area. But they've got the first definition that I put in of employee engagement, and they say engaged employees are those who are involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work and workplace. Who wants to have enthusiastic employees come in every day and represent your company? Yeah, it helps a lot. All right, Willis Towers Watson, again, another good, kind of a combination of consulting company, and they also do some employee benefits. So they had a merger there. And their definition is engagement is employees' willingness and ability to contribute to the company's success. And we're going to talk about this a little bit because employees have a choice. They have a choice every day that they come in. Am I going to be engaged or am I not going to be engaged? But what we can do with some of the things that we can put into place, we can impact and influence that choice so they're going to want to come in and be engaged. And then Aon Hewitt, again, another large consulting firm. So if you find any data or research, I'm always leery. I say, please do not do HR by Google. That can get you in trouble. But if you're out looking for information, any of these three companies, you're going to be good. Aon Hewitt says employee engagement is the level of an employee's psychological investment in their organization. That sounds like the most, academic and textbooky-ish, which is always my term for definitions, type of term. But you can see the theme here. We're talking about, when employees come in, how committed are they? How much are they willing to give? How excited are they about coming in to the workplace in their job? So let's talk about some different things that we can do to impact that employee engagement. But first, I think it's really important if we can recognize some things that might be going on that are some red flags. Say, uh-oh, wait a minute, I might have a problem here. I might not have highly engaged employees. And actually, let me take a step back first. I didn't put this in here, but I wanted to read some data for you. And this is also from Gallup. Gallup says that 33% of American workers are engaged in their jobs. And I have another stat a little bit later. It says 21%. So fully engaged employees, it's not as high as what we would like. 52% say they're just showing up. And 17% describe themselves as actively disengaged. And actively disengaged can be really problematic. And I'm not spending a lot of time on that at this point. But if you start to see some of these signs, you may have some disengaged employees. And if you get those actively disengaged, these are folks that could potentially be sabotaging your business because they are just doing things that are not helpful and maybe counterintuitive and maybe impacting other employees, customers, and really costing you a lot of money. So we want to look at, hone in on some of these. And so some of the things you might see, and if you want to let me know, or if you just want to think about it, actually just let me know when we start talking about the positive things. Don't let me know if you see this in your workplace. Just think about it and make a quick note to say, uh-oh, I got to check on something. Negative attitude. Well, there's two words in there that are a little bit tricky, negative and attitude, especially attitude. How do you define attitude? I'm going to go off on a little bit of a side road here. When I work with a lot of clients or managers of companies that I've actually worked with, and they have an employee who's not working out as well, maybe their performance isn't there, maybe they're having some absenteeism. Oh, these are potentially signs of disengaged employees. They'll say, oh, they've got a really bad attitude. Have you ever heard that? Somebody describes somebody as having a bad attitude. Well, what does a bad attitude mean to each of us? That can be a little bit tricky. But in this case, since we're not writing them up for a performance improvement plan or disciplinary action yet, go with your gut. You kind of know when you see somebody with a negative or a bad attitude. That could be problematic. Could be that they just had a bad day and they had a flat tire on the way to work, or who knows, so find out. But anyway, distracted or difficulty focusing. And one of the things you want to look at is if you've had an employee who's been really good. I mean, they've been focused, they've come in, they've been able to do their work, their quality is good. And then all of a sudden, over a little period of time, we start to see some changes. And all of a sudden, they're making more mistakes. They seem like they're really not, paying as much attention. You want to be on the lookout for that because there could be something that's changed in their lives, either at work or outside of work, that may be impacting them. Low productivity. Hopefully none of you have employees that are not high producers, but maybe you've been in a job before and you knew that person who maybe you worked closely with or, was part of your work group, and they just weren't contributing their fair share. Now you as managers and as business owners, how many of you want to make sure everybody's as productive as they can be? You want that high productivity, absolutely, because that helps all of us. So if we see some low productivity, we want to look into it. They just complete the minimum amount of work. You ever known somebody that does that? Like, yeah, I did just enough there. I asked this earlier. I was at a client and I was telling him that I was doing this workshop today, and it tied in nicely with a project that we were working on. And we were going through some of these slides. Did anybody ever see the movie? It's older now. Office Space, not The Office, the TV show, but Office Space. All right. And Michael, the lead character, is in there. All right. I love that movie. Lead character was talking with some consultants. The company brought in a couple efficiency consultants to see how people were doing. And he said, I do just enough work to get by and not have somebody get on my case or get in trouble for it. How many of us want that kind of employee? We don't want that kind of employee. Won't get much done. All right, high absenteeism. This is usually a telltale sign that something's going on. And again, especially if they were doing well for a while and then all of a sudden it changes. That's a different situation than you hire a new employee and right from the get-go, they're calling in sick or they're coming in late. Somebody who's been good for a while and changes, we might be able to fix that and get them back on track. Here's one, really start looking for this. There are people who will accept all the credit if something goes well, but if something doesn't go well, they're deflecting, they're blaming. You know what I mean by deflecting? Oh, it was the weather, I couldn't help it, or this happened, or Joe did that, and blaming him. If you see that, you got a big problem because they're undermining and other employees are seeing it and they don't like it too much. Start to resent them. If they're self-centered or if they're a clock watcher. Anybody ever have one of those? Like, is it time to go home yet? Is it time to go home yet? Look at my watch. I'm old school, I have one of those. Yeah, these are behaviors. If you see any of this going on, we're gonna need to start to take a look at a little more closely, say, okay, what's happening? All right, here's the dollars and cents part of it. I mean, why do we really wanna worry about this? I mean, they're okay. So in some cases, I've known employers like, I just need somebody to show up. At this point, I need a warm body. Well, here's what happens. Complacency is costing you. And again, according to Gallup, you can tell I like Gallup. This actually came out of Forbes magazine, but they were quoting Gallup. Disengaged employees have 37% higher absenteeism. Oh, that's what we were just mentioning on the previous slide. They have 18% lower productivity. We were talking about that. And when it translates to dollars, it costs you 34% of their annual salary. So $3,400 for every $10,000 that they make. So let's take an example of somebody who makes $30,000 a year. You, in essence, are losing $10,200 per year. The tricky part is it's hard to see this because you're not writing a check for it. It's not like you bought a new piece of equipment and you wrote the check for $10,200. This is creeping away, chipping away at your profitability every day. And it's really subtle, but just know it's really happening. Because if you have that disengaged employee or if you get that engaged employee, increasing that productivity by 37%, even if they show up to work that much more. Can you start to see how that's going to make a big difference to your bottom line? How many of you, does that make sense that it's really costing us? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Okay. So it's big money. And then again, the higher number of people you have doing this and or the higher their pay is, the more it's impacting you. So we want to get on top of it. All right. So that's enough of the negative. Let's look at some characteristics that you may observe. Positive employees. They're the ones that are, the team comes first. They're the ones that if you need to ask them, I need somebody else to come in on Saturday because either something happened, somebody needs to be off at the last minute, or we're going to have a big influx of business that day. We've got a big event. Can you come in? They're like, yep, I'm in, I'll be there because I know I want to help out my coworkers. They go above and beyond, often without being asked. How many of you have those employees that are constantly looking for things? They're coming to you saying, hey, Michelle, I was looking at this, and when the customer came in, this whole process didn't go very well. And I think if we did this, this, and this, we can make the whole customer experience better. How many of you have employees that are doing that for you? Anybody? A little bit? All right, I'm flipping through here. Keep your hands up. I only have a few of you that are on screen, so thank you. Thank you, Patricia. You're just so great about being there and being on screens. I appreciate it. Okay, that's one of the things that we want to look for. And then we want to make sure we reward people and really encourage that type of behavior. Those are your engaged employees. When they're going above and beyond, and they're saving you money, and they're making the employment experience better, they're making the customer experience better, and they're making your business better. and more profitable. So that's what we want to be looking for. The people you want on your team are also looking for solutions. You ever had that? Well, we have this problem today, and everybody kind of looks at you like, okay, what are you gonna do to fix it, boss? Well, you don't have time to identify everything and fix everything. So we want those engaged employees that are focusing on solutions. You know, we've got this problem today, like, ooh, I think we could do this. They have an example. A lot of times people just want to be asked too, what's your opinion? What do you think? I mentioned I used to work for Chrysler, and I worked in large automotive plants where we'd have several thousand employees. And at the time I was working with safety and labor relations, and we had this big safety issue down on the floor. And I don't know if any of you have ever been in an automotive plant. They used to give tours. It's kind of fascinating. You know, we've got a couple of plants around here, but they have what's called a carrier, and it takes the body all the way around the production facility, and people put on doors, and they put on tires, and they put on all the parts and pieces that you need. So the way this carrier was going, and it would turn, you know, because it depended on the building, there was this junction box that was out there, and the way the carrier would come around, there was this big blind spot. And if somebody couldn't see that, they could get hit by the carrier. It was really dangerous because we don't want people to get hit. So typical fashion of what happened in the industry at the time, we would get a bunch of engineers down on the floor. We'd get a bunch of managers down on the floor. I mean, we had like 12 people all standing around, our skilled trades guys who might be doing some of the fixing. And everybody's looking, you're like, well, you know, this junction box, it's in the way, and we need to move it, and it's going to cost us, you know, thousands of dollars. And they're doing all this kind of stuff. And I looked down the line, and one of the guys who was down there, worked there every day, he's got this smirk on his face. And yeah, all right, let me go see what he's chuckling about. So I went down and I asked him, like, yeah, what are you grinning about? And he said, these guys are killing me. They're trying to move everything and all this and that. All you have to do is put this little sign over there. You put this here and then add it, you know, on there. It's got the warning, and it's really easy. People can see right around it, and it's not a problem. So I went back and I'm like, hey, you know, Jim has this really great idea. We told him the next day it was fixed, and it cost next to nothing instead of costing tens of thousands of dollars. If we hadn't gone down and asked, and somebody didn't care enough to share, he was engaged. You know, he wanted to contribute. He wanted his workplace to be better and safer. But if we hadn't asked him, we never would have found out about that. So a lot of times just ask employees, and that'll work. Also, when you see engaged employees, they pass along the credit and they take responsibility for mistakes. So let me ask you a question. Who likes Patrick Mahomes of the Chiefs? Okay, how can you say you don't, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he's amazing. I've seen a few interviews with Patrick Mahomes, and the interviewer was talking, you know, and interviewed him, and then they were commenting on how amazing it is when Patrick is playing and you ask him a question. All right, what happened with this play? You know, they're doing the recap afterwards, right? And it's the post-game interview. Yeah, what happened with this play? If it's a play that went really well and they scored a touchdown, Patrick explains it in such a way that he says, well, you know, the blockers were doing a great job of blocking. They made sure that I could make the pass. They made sure that the receiver was wide open, and so he could catch it. And then the blockers created that opening, and that receiver could take advantage of getting right on through there and score that touchdown. See how he's explaining that, how everybody else in the team had their part of it, and they contributed to scoring the touchdown. He's also in the same interview would say, you know, they said, well, you know, what happened on that big turnover play? You know what happened? He's like, you know what? I didn't execute my play right. I didn't read the other team right, and I didn't execute it. So that's a great example. If he's giving credit to everybody else, it wasn't Patrick made the pass and made the play, and oh, everybody else. I don't know what happened when we didn't make the pass. Just the opposite. He gives credit to everybody else, and then he will take the blame if something goes wrong. So those are the kind of people that you want on your team. So, okay, we're going to try this. We're going to see how we do. Maybe we need to do this with the chat box, because I don't have too many of you that are on the screen, or if you're willing to go off the screen. I want to get your feedback. What do you see in the workplace? Now that you're kind of thinking about some of these characteristics that you might observe when you see somebody who is engaged in doing the right things. I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to see if anybody will share what you're seeing in the workplace.
I've tried to give somebody else a chance, but.
Go ahead, Patricia. I really appreciate that you will participate a lot, so go for it.
So you want an example of engagement or disengagement?
I want to start with the positive first. So let's talk about engagement, because I'm hoping you're seeing that in the workplace. So what are you seeing when, now that you're thinking about these types of characteristics, you're like, I think that's an indication I've got an engaged employee.
Well, I know I have one now who is newer to our company, and he's kind of just learning all the nuts and bolts. But you can just tell by questions that he asks or things that he needs, that he's just engaged in the growth of the company, wanting to be a part of some of the things that our leadership team is doing. Just to me, just gives me that security that I think he's in it for the long haul. And even though he may not know all the nuts and bolts of the company yet, he's, just constantly trying to figure out what he can do to help improve things.
Okay, great examples. And I'm going to have to add that one into the PowerPoint. Somebody who's asking a lot of questions, eager to learn, that is a really good sign. It'll be good to see how he is in another 3 months, 6 months. Hopefully he keeps that same enthusiasm, that excitement and eagerness to learn and ask those questions. Really good sign that he's asking about what the leadership team is doing and potentially opportunities for him with that type of a role. So yeah, I think you've got a great new employee that's off to a good start. And like you said, he doesn't know all the nuts and bolts yet, but it takes some time. I mean, that's just to be expected when you bring in somebody new. So yeah, great example. Thanks.
You want to mute us? We got the button.
Anybody else have anything to share? Okay, now I'm going to take it to the flip side. What about disengaged employees? Now that we're talking a little bit about that as well. And you don't have to talk about it if it's in your workplace. You can give us an example from someplace else. What do you see? I'm hoping to get some good examples.
I've heard many examples due to COVID and everyone who can work from home getting to transition to working from home. I've heard a lot of opinions of the people running those companies that they aren't sure that some of their people are working. They're still turning in hours. I mean, for the record, I work more from home than I even could in the office because there's no other distractions. But I have heard people commenting on whether or not those people actually are at their desks. What are they being paid for right now, kind of thing.
That's a good example about working from home. So how many people, and if you'll type it in the chat or if you raise your hands, how many of you have employees that are working from home? Because for some organizations you can do that and some you can't. Okay, we've got a couple of you. Yeah, that's been a really tricky one to try to figure out. Quite honestly, some people will never be very good at working from home. They're distracted. There's laundry I've got to throw in, or the dishwasher, maybe I need to empty that right now. House has never been as clean as it is now when we're supposed to be working, but we're working from home. And a lot of people will fully admit it. They'll say, I am not good at working from home because I know that, when the football game is on starting at 4 o'clock because they've rescheduled it, I'm going to go watch the football game. Although people can do that at work too. I mean, March Madness is one of the biggest productivity zappers in the country. And let's hope we have March Madness this year because it was really sad that we didn't in 2020. So it can be really difficult if you do have people working from home. Make sure that you have them working on things that you can manage that in terms of really knowing what the deliverables are, and you can assess as they're going along. Are they getting the work done that they're supposed to be getting done? Are they turning in, the documents or the reports or the things that they were supposed to be turning in before? What additional or different types of assignments or duties can I give them when they go at home into their home office environment, instead of being in the office where I have a little bit better opportunity to keep an eye on them. So you just want to work on that. And another thing that's good is to really start touching base with people more frequently. Ask them how they're doing. Make sure you have those daily check-ins. I know companies that have been pretty successful with work from home, they have a morning meeting. So everybody gets on, Zoom like this, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., whatever time they usually start. And they have that check-in and they can ask how people are doing, what they're doing, what do they need help with that day. just to keep that connectivity and some of that accountability, and then people know what's going on with everybody else. So those are a few of the strategies that I've engaged with, and I know that my clients are engaging with as well, to try to keep that connectivity and keep people really feeling a part of the organization and accountable, you know, as they're working from home. So, yeah, good. Yeah, Patricia.
Hey, Karen, I got a question.
You bet.
Because I mean, we're just still pretty new company. We've only been around for 5 years, right? But in the 5 years, it's kind of clear to see when an employee, what I've been taught to call it is just checks out. And then they usually say, well, I've learned through some different classes that I've taken over the years that, you know, when you may have an A player that turns, you think they're an A player, but as soon as they start getting down to the C, D, and F, then to go ahead and let them go sooner than later. So can you maybe speak on when you first see an employee check out, like what would you do would you just go ahead and try to replace them or try to keep them? Like, what would you do when you first see that initial checkout?
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you a question, Patricia. Is it somebody who's worked for you for the whole 5 years, or is it somebody who's maybe been with you for 6 months?
I'm just kind of speaking hypothetically, because
Okay.
I don't have that person right now, because my team is really dealing with that. But I'm just thinking hypothetically, I have had someone who's been with me. I've had both ways. I've had someone who's been with me for a minute and then kind of checked out, or you know, due to maybe a hardship or something. And then I've just had someone who, you know, was only checked in through training, and then, you know, once that was over, they kind of, I don't know, they were just there for the paycheck. So I'm just thinking of like when you first see that initial checkout, you know, they may be excited for a few weeks and then all of a sudden, you know, their activities changing. Like, what do you suggest when you see that first initial checkout?
Yeah. Okay. That's good context. I'm going to give you a couple of examples because typical of a lot of things in HR, it depends. You know, if you have that new person who, you know, they're in that honeymoon period when you first hire them, they're going through training. It's not going to get any better than that in terms of their enthusiasm and typically their engagement, because it's new and it's a new job and they hopefully wanted that new job and they're excited about it. Sometimes when they get in and they, you know, kind of the switch flips and they're not so engaged anymore, maybe it wasn't what they expected it was going to be. Maybe it's harder than what they expected it was going to be. There are some people who really don't want to work very hard. I know, surprising. You know, a number of things could be going on. If it's early into it, now, again, remember, I come from the very conservative companies. I always like to at least give them one shot at it, you know, have a discussion and give them, you know, some type of, you know, written warning, maybe to say this is it, you know, especially if they're early into it, say, boy, you know, it started out great in the training, you were catching on quickly. We thought there's a lot of promise. You seem to be enjoying the work and it was going to be a good fit. You know, what's happened? It doesn't seem like you're coming in with the same amount of enthusiasm and, you know, go-getiveness or whatever words you would use that you were during training. You know, what's going on? Because there could be something, like you said, Patricia, maybe there was a hardship, maybe something has just recently happened at home. And especially right now, you know, Michelle mentioned we have COVID. So there's so many things going on right now that are throwing extra curveballs into people's lives. So I always like to have that conversation with them. I kind of hem-haw around. And I go, oh, well, look for that deflecting, look for that blaming. That's a big red flag. If I start hearing deflecting and blaming, I'm like, okay, we want to get them out as fast as possible, because that's a characteristic and ties in kind of with their work ethic and their values. And you're not going to be able to change that very well. Maybe give them one shot. Okay, here's the expectation. I've got a written warning for you. You know, we've invested in you. We want you to do a good job. We want you to be successful, but it's up to you. So you decide, this is the expectation. Are you good with it? Yeah. Have them sign it. You know, I always like everything in writing, that you've given them that written warning, given them a chance to ask questions, clarify what the expectation is. And then if it continues, then you bring them back and say, you know, I'm sorry, I misjudged this. I thought it was going to be a good job fit. And it just doesn't seem to be based on your, you know, doing this, and this. You know, it's based on specific observable behaviors, and, you know, let them go. If they've been with you for a long time, maybe a year, 2 years, they've been a good employee. They come to work on time. They've been one of those employees that, I'll take that Saturday shift that you need somebody to come in. And then all of a sudden it changes. I like to spend a little more time with those folks, because in all likelihood, something else is going on in life that's
Karen, while you're giving this example, because this may be great for my team what if you have like new management that comes in on a great employee, but maybe that employee has that pocket where maybe there's a hardship, or maybe, I don't know, there's something going on to where they're not showing up to work like they used to, their performance isn't like it used to, and it happens right when the new manager comes in, right? So if they've been an A player up until now, like, how do you handle that with your new manager? How do you help your manager know that they may be an awesome employee even though you came in on them bad? Like, do you just let your manager let them go and replace them? Or like, what would be your suggestion in that scenario?
Yeah, it's going to be hard for that manager, because the manager, their impression is, well, what's going on? Bob just doesn't work. You know, we've got this going. So hopefully if you're working with the new manager and you're helping acclimate him, let them know, we've had this really good track record with Bob. I hope nobody named Bob is on the call, because I'm using Bob as our, employee who's now had the change in behavior. But work with the manager on that and say, hey, can you look beyond that? Because if you had been working with him for the last 2 years, he has come to work on time every day. And he's really a good performer. His deliverables are top notch. His quality is good. In your case, the residents love him. The other coworkers love him. Something must be going on. You're willing to, have that conversation with him and find out a little bit more. And so that would be a little coaching for that new manager. That hopefully will be open to that and say, oh yeah, I don't know all the information. I just came in, that. Patricia, thank you for sharing it with me. And yeah, let's have that conversation. Maybe it's something you have together with them or work with them on it. Again, if you've got somebody who's got 2 years into the company, I really hate to see somebody try to cut them loose too fast. Plus, okay, now I'm going to go to the risk side of it. Now, we are in a little bit more of a situation where he's been a good employee. Maybe now he's having these issues. Is there something going on from a health condition or something that, if you come back and you just fire him real quickly, don't give him the benefit of the doubt. I always want to make sure we're not giving him an opportunity to come back and allege that we fired them for some discriminatory reason. So, and they can come up with all sorts of things, and it can be true or not true. It's usually not true. I had one situation, it wasn't even a performance issue. It was unfortunate. It was a downsizing. I mean, the company just needed to eliminate some staff because they had some changes and they didn't need that. And so unfortunately, one of the ones who wasn't the highest performer and was one in a, type of job, they could let him go. And it was interesting because we're going through the process and delivering the news and the information. And the owner was really gracious. She had severance form and everything was really great. I mean, great on the part of what the owner was doing to try to make it as good of a situation as you can when you're letting somebody go. Giving him severance is very gracious. And all of a sudden the employee's like, oh, well, remember the other day when I tripped over that cord and, oh yeah, I'm feeling a little sore from that. I was like, oh, good golly. So we just downplayed that a little bit. We helped her pack up her stuff and go. And so then we're walking around the facility. I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do? There were some extension cords. OSHA would not have been happy. I'm like, okay, let's get all this cleaned up. Let's make sure that, you report that out, because they told me what happened that day she tripped and fell. I'm like, yeah, she said she was fine. It was a klutzy move. It wasn't even an extension cord. Yeah, the whole bit. They had done everything right the day the accident happened. I said, do you have it documented anywhere? Like, nope. I said, all right, you need to go back and write up, what happened that day, date it today, the best as you can recall. But yeah, you always want to document that, because all of a sudden now we were in a situation where she loved the company, everything was good, but now she didn't because we were letting her go. And I hurt my back, So it all depends on the situation, but you don't want to open that door where somebody's going to come back and allege something. Now, nothing ever happened. She never, filed a charge, but, it kind of gives you that little knot in your stomach for the business owners, like, oh shoot, what's she going to do now? So that's why I always like to work with my clients, and let's make sure we set everything up well ahead of time. And we've minimized your potential risk, getting everything in writing. Those of you who've been on these webinars, everything in writing, get them to sign it. But a newer employee, you don't give them as much time to try to recover because they don't have the track record with you. A longer term employee, I would invest a little more time in it. So that was a really long answer, but hopefully that answers it. So what else? Does anybody else have a question? And I realized I jumped in, I started talking. I forgot to ask the first question of the day. So you can think about this. Is there anything else you want me to make sure that I cover for you? I appreciate that Patricia will jump in and ask questions. I'd love it if you all would do that. But if you want to put something in the chat box, or if you want to take it off mute and let me know, I know this is the topic today. And I have this that's kind of related or maybe not even related, but I really want to know about this. I will write that down. I'll make sure we cover it. Yeah, Miranda, you have something?
Just a question on what Patricia was talking about
Okay.
previously. That, maybe there's an employee who was a good employee before, but now for the new manager is not. And what if, like, maybe it's that employee doesn't really like the changes, the fact that there is a new manager. What is your opinion in that case?
Well, in that situation, the employee's got to make a choice. This is your new manager and who you're working with. Need to have some discussion around that. And maybe that new manager, I mean, it should be the manager who's sitting down talking with them. Bob, what's the change in behavior? I hear you've been really good before. The employee may or may not be comfortable telling Bob he just doesn't like him, or he doesn't like his approach, or he doesn't like his style. I mean, we've all had somebody we worked for that it just doesn't click as well. I mean, for just reasons of just personality type or so forth. If the new manager just really can't get a good explanation from Bob, if you have another manager, or, if like Miranda, in your case, if you had a manager working for you, if you wanted to step in, again, because you've got so much invested in that employee and they're good, and it's going to cost you, 30 to 200% of that employee's yearly salary. If they walk out the door, if you fire them, or if they just leave, by the time you go through the recruiting process again, you have to take the time to interview. You have other people working overtime to cover for them. When you bring the new person in, you have to train them. It's expensive to lose somebody. That's why you want to try to the best that you can to salvage that and find out what's going on. And then, maybe you talk to Miranda and they say, yeah, really, it's just like, this is what the new manager's doing. And it rubbed me the wrong way. And then have some dialogue around, can you, recover from that? Is it something that's maybe they just got off to the wrong start and off the wrong foot? You know how that happens sometimes, and you can clear up a misunderstanding. But if there's something really systemic there for some reason, maybe the employee says, I don't like to work for females who are 5'1" because I had a really bad experience one time. And Karen, you look just like my mother or whatever, Well, there's nothing we can do about it. I'm your new manager. You got a choice. And if they just can't, make that decision to put that aside and do the good job again, you just have to let them know. It may lead to a situation that could fall into disciplinary action up to including termination. So you got a choice. Can you get over 5'1"? Looks like your mom. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We have an engaged employee, but his personality traits aren't well liked in our operation. And I wanted to know if you had any suggestions to kind of keep the morale and that they all get along, the employees.
Yeah.
He's a good employee, just his personality comes off a little tense.
Yes. Okay, that can happen. And sometimes people don't even realize it, because I still contend, I tell people this, just about everybody, there's always an exception, but people don't get up in the morning to try to purposely go into a work and annoy their coworkers. People just don't try to do that. They're doing things that they don't realize it. So do you have anybody who works with them, a manager or you, or maybe another fellow colleague who works side by side, who has the type of relationship with them that they could have a conversation with them?
Yeah, I would say so.
Pardon?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. And, and here's one thing. Okay. Whenever giving feedback, there's a couple of tips I give. I recommend that you do not use the word criticism. I have some constructive criticism for you. That is the biggest turnoff in the world. Patricia, I want to sit down and have a constructive criticism discussion with you. What do you think? You want to? You're like, no. So when you tee it up with this employee, say, okay, Bob, Bob's my target today, apparently. Bob, I want to give you some feedback. If you're open to it, are you open to some feedback that can help make the job go even better? Most people will say, oh yeah, because most people want to do a better job. Say, Bob, I just want to let you know this because you're probably not aware. Your coworkers really like working with you. We like the work that you're doing. You've got this one thing that you say or do that's or not quirky, but it's they say or do either the tone, the way it comes across, or the word choices, and it really bothers your employees. Do you think you would refrain from doing that anymore? Most of the time people will say, yes, I had no idea that that was bothering my coworkers. I feel really bad. You want me to go apologize? What do you want me to do? I'm like, no, don't do all that. Just stop doing it and everybody will be really happy. Okay, great. And usually that's all it takes, just that awareness that it's going on, but it's all on how you tee it up. I just want to help you, wanted to make you aware of something, help make the workplace a better place, make your job better, more enjoyable, whatever might resonate with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I give you one more example. This was me. Way back in the day, I had started something, and I don't know, it was a new job, and there were a couple of things that, I was just learning it. And, we all do that, right? We're going through the job. And I actually was blonde then. I'm not anymore, but at the time I was blonde, and I had a coworker named Stan. I was like, oh shoot, Stan, I'm sorry. I messed that one up. I'm having a blonde moment. And I said that 3 times. Well, for some reason that really bothered him. And I didn't think, it was me. I was talking about myself. I was criticizing myself. And I didn't know him that well yet because I hadn't been with the group that long. So he went to our manager and he asked Michelle to talk with me and asked me to not use that phrase anymore because it really bothered him. And I had no idea, it's talking about myself. So it's not just something that people do sometimes that they say kind of in general, or if they say towards somebody else, sometimes it's even as they're describing something or characteristics about themselves. And quite honestly, most of the time people just don't know. So could be any of those scenarios. So yeah, good question. I appreciate the questions. What else do you have going on in the workplace? Either engaged or disengaged employees? Okay, is there anything else you want me to make sure that I cover for you? Okay, well, let's move along then. Oh, I think I got out of here now. What I do? Okay, here we go. All right, here's some things that you can do right now that will impact your employee engagement, and your engagement positively impacts your retention. And I also wanted to mention, the things that we're talking about here, increasing that engagement. You might hear the term, or it's discussed when we say people have job satisfaction. Sometimes the terms are used kind of interchangeably. They're a little bit different. We can like our job, we still might not be too engaged, or vice versa, but the two are similar. And when we work on that engagement, that positively impacts, engagement goes up, that tends to impact our retention. Now, keep in mind, every so often, you're going to have people who are going to leave, regardless of what we do here. They're going to leave because maybe they have a spouse or significant other who has to move out of state for a job or a family reason, and they need to move. Sometimes that happens. They have a baby and it just works out where, it makes sense to stay home. So there's going to be really legitimate reasons, or good reasons, but we still want to keep doing all the things we can to try to retain them. So regular communication. For those of you who've been on some of these other webinars, who's heard me say communicate, communicate, communicate? I know I say this all the time, but people need that. And it was interesting. The client that I was working with earlier today, I was talking about this workshop coming up. We're going through a job description, job responsibility realignment, because it's a good idea to do that every so often. And we were talking about, what are some of the things that we do to make sure we communicate, during, our normal work experience. And then we throw COVID on top of that and throw in, we just got through politics, and, a lot of things have happened this year. So that regular communication. And one of the things, I recommend, find out from your employees what works for them. I always like to have regular team meetings. So I mentioned that earlier, if you have a lot of people working from home and you get on the Zoom and everybody connects at least for one time during the day, they get to share what they're working on. Have regular one-on-one meetings with your employees. How many of you meet with your employees one-on-one at least once a month? Okay. All right, Teresa, I see that. That's good. What about yearly? Do you do yearly performance reviews? I'm not a big proponent of yearly performance reviews, so if you're not doing it, that's okay. But what you need to do instead is meet with them more often. So I would recommend, again, it's going to depend on the job. And in Patricia's example with that newer employee, you need to be meeting with them and communicating more often, right? Because they're new, they're getting up to speed, they're learning. But then as they get more proficient and they get better at their job, more confident, you're backing off that communication about the job training, but you've shifted that to, all right, what else is going on? How is this impacting our clients? How is it impacting our patients? How is it impacting our customers? what's going on, what's working well. And this is really good that you did today. You know, I want to commend you on that because I heard from our customer that they really appreciated that. Patricia, you got.
So are you saying, you can tell by the mute buttons out.
Uh-huh.
So are you saying that the coaching, are you saying in the beginning, obviously it's going to fade out, right? Because it's not going to be as necessary, but in the beginning, do you think there's a weekly coaching, a monthly coaching? Like, what do you think in the beginning? Or is it going to be dependent on the employee? Or is there just like a standard? Like in the beginning of first 60 days, you should meet once a week. What do you think?
I wish there was a standard that would make it really easy. There's not. It depends on the job. It depends on the employee. Quite honestly, in the beginning, that first week, I'd be talking to him every day. How's it going? How you feeling? What went well? What are you not clear about? You know, what
Are these like quick check-ins or
Yeah.
official meetings, like official talking to them?
Well, they're sort of official because you're purposely making sure you're talking to them, but just let them know, hey, I want to make sure that we sit down before the end of shift. What time are you going home today? You're going home at 3:30. Make sure you come by my office by 3:15. It's not going to be long. These are going to be like 4 or 5 minutes, but you're having that check-in to say, what's gone well today? I'm hearing this is working out. Okay, what's still confusing to you? What didn't go so well? Because there's a whole bunch of stuff, you know, especially that first week, you're drinking from the fire hose and so much information is going in, and you're doing two things. You're giving them the undivided attention that you can catch something before it goes on for a while because they weren't sure. You're also indicating to them they're important. I mean, you're busy, you're running around the whole place, but you're taking that time every day at 3:15 before they go home at 3:30, because they are important enough to you to make sure that you're giving them that undivided attention to make sure that their training and onboarding is going well. Then maybe the next week, you know, maybe it's okay. Ask them, what do you need? What would be good? Yeah, I think if I just check in with you, maybe Monday when we're first starting, and maybe Friday at the end of the week. Okay, great. And, you know, then they're going to have that other training going on. You know, they're working with somebody else side by side, and oh, now they're learning how to do this over here. But you kind of gauge it, you know, by person. But even after you've got your staff that's been there for a while, once a month, I have managers that meet weekly. So, and the other thing too, to keep in mind, the more frequent the meetings are, the shorter they are, right? Because you don't have as much to talk about. You just talked a week ago. If it's monthly, you need to, you know, give it a little bit more time. That's why those yearly performance reviews, they are tough because I can't remember what happened last week, let alone 11 months ago. And then if I'm trying to cover 11 months of what my employee did, yeah, I'm going to be talking to him for 2 hours and I can't remember half of it anyhow. So that's why I really don't like it. If you want anything that's kind of official, get like a quarterly, you know, quarterly, you can sit down and you can document it, put it in a file, and then have those periodic check-ins in between. And again, it catches those things so early, which really helps improve that efficiency and reduces errors and confusion.
Hey, Karen, do you see a difference? I heard you just say you had a client who meets weekly with their employees. Do you see a difference in maybe retention or anything with those clients that may meet weekly and some that may not meet often at all?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, again, that's a nice thing. I can pull in all these different examples from different clients I have now in different places I've worked. But yeah, I've got the client who meets with them weekly, and you know, and I've worked with them pretty closely. They have very structured everything they do, and that's part of what they do. And the employees, I've talked to them, the feedback is, yeah, it's really great because Bill sits down, he takes that time to talk with us. Again, it's not long, it might be 15 minutes, but they're having that regular, consistent check-in. And if something's starting to go awry with a project, because this is a little bit different setting, they kind of have projects, but then they have customers that they're taking care of every day. So if something is not going well and they haven't caught up, or it's just been kind of festering, they can catch it that week. It's not going to go for months. And then I've got other clients. We just did a quick culture survey, you know, where it's one of those anonymous surveys where you send it out and you find out how people are feeling. And yeah, it came back across the board. You could tell some of the managers are having those regular check-ins and some of them are not. And absolutely the feedback is big difference. And will it absolutely result in somebody leaving? Not necessarily. I mean, they've got to find another opportunity, but it might open them up to maybe looking at something, maybe checking Indeed once in a while, maybe talking to their neighbor when their neighbor said, yeah, you know, I've heard about this job. If they're really engaged, they know their manager cares about them, they're meeting all the time. They're like, yeah, I love my job. I don't even want to hear about it. You know, go ask Howard on the other, you know, end of the block. So yeah, it will definitely impact that engagement. So, all right, let's create a great place to work. This is interesting. The Kansas City Business Journal. Is everybody familiar with the Kansas City Business Journal, print and online publication that comes out? Yeah, really focused. I mean, there's a bunch of business journals around the country. I think there's like 25 of them in different cities, but Kansas City, they just came out with the very small best business to work for. So I said, oh, I have a very small business. So let's see how small I got. One of the, lost train of thought. Sorry. One of the companies that was named as one of the best, very small places to work has 14 employees. So I thought that was pretty cool because they're looking at employers that are that small. One had 14, one had 30, and I think the other had 40 or something like that. But yeah, so, you know, people are paying attention to it. And I tell you what, if you can be named one of the best very small businesses to work for, that's a great recruiting tool. So something to keep in mind. Because yeah, you can tout that on your job postings and your employees are talking about it. It's very good. So what's a great place to work? Well, it's different for everybody, isn't it? For some, it might be flexible hours if you can offer that for your employees. Some it might be you have potlucks. Well, back when we're all working and together, and never mind, not right now. When COVID's over, we'll go back to having potlucks. For some, it's having, you know, a summer picnic with the family because that's what's important to people. For some, it's, you know, we have a regular Friday afternoon get together. You know, there's still places that they have kegs of beer in the workplace and they have beer. I don't recommend it as an HR consultant. Places do that, but maybe it's, you know, you have sodas. I'm being HR right now. You have sodas and popcorn, but you know, whatever that looks like for a fun place to work. But, you know, creating a great place too. And what does that mean? Your company and your culture will help define some of that, but ask your employees and they'll tell you. Another thing that owners and managers can do is they're future oriented. You know, what does it look like for the company? Are we going to open up another location? Oh, that's great because we're going to have more career advancement opportunities for people. We're going to be able to grow. We're going to, you know, be more profitable. You know, what does the future look like? Again, you have to kind of balance that because if the future looks like a whole lot of work for our employees in the short term, that might stress them out a little bit. So you as owners and managers have to balance that, giving enough information. Yeah, there's growth, there's exciting things coming, there's new customers, there's new contracts that we're working on trying to secure, whatever that looks like for your organization. But employees want to know that you're thinking about the future, that we're going to be safe, that we're going to have a company a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. That gives me job security and that helps me become more engaged. And then the really engaging companies, the managers, the leaders, their staff knows that people are first. And, you know, if somebody has a death in the family, people kind of rally around that. You know, whatever might be going on in the workplace, you have to balance, you know, how much personal information you know about your employees and how much you don't know, because that can differ from employer to employer and employee to employee. You know, some don't want to share a lot and that's okay, and others do. But, you know, people are important. We're going to be as flexible as we can with our hours. We're going to have, you know, an employee referral program because we value the people that are the work that you do and the people that you know, they're probably going to be like you. Invest in your employees, invest in more training. If you can, like right now, well, no, that's a bad example. Never mind. But if you can, you know, send them to some training, let them know. I don't have a lot of money, but if you can have any type of small continuing education budget that you can put into place where, you know, somebody wants to go take a fabulous class at UMKC through the Small Business Development Center. Sometimes they're free, sometimes there's paid classes. It doesn't necessarily have to be something you pay for. Will you let them take the time away from work to go to one of those fabulous classes at UMKC's Small Business Development Center? You're investing in your employee. Yeah, Patricia.
So would those classes be during like the work hour, and would that be the way you could kind of sneak in, maybe not being able to send them to full-fledged college to get a master's degree?
Absolutely, yes.
So like, would you suggest maybe create, because you got the SBDC, I always get the
I know.
letters
It's a
wrong,
long acronym.
but they have so many great training classes. We've actually taken advantage of quite a few. So maybe would you suggest maybe giving a list of classes that the company would be willing to, I don't know, put out there, like here's a list, maybe we could find free classes as a company and then just give them so many hours a month for this, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great start. Yeah, find the classes. Ideally, find classes that will also benefit your company. So it's a win-win for everybody. Don't send them to paralegal training because that's not going to help you, right? And just like larger companies that have full-blown tuition reimbursement programs, they typically, the parameters are something that will be beneficial for you to help you do your job better, grow in your job, get you more skill set, because someday you won't work for us anymore and you're probably not going to retire from our company. I'm realistic enough to know that. But in the meantime, I'm willing to invest, especially if you can get one of those free classes, even better. All you're investing is their salary, right? The pay. And if you can afford that, it's really a teeny tiny investment in what you're getting back in a more skilled employee, and an employee who's like, wow, Patricia cares about me. And she wants to make sure that I'm growing in my skills and I have skill set, which gives me more security that if something happens down the road, I'm a well-trained employee and I can go find something else. I mean, it's a win for everybody. So yeah, give them a certain number of hours to the best that you can. Ask them, what are you interested in? Here's a list, here's some options. Like you said, as long as they help you and them, it's a win for everybody. And
So is this a
center, because we send more trainees to the classes.
is this a part of online? Is this a part of like their enrollment? Like their onboarding is the word I'm looking for. Is this a part of their onboarding? Is this something that they get at their 90 days once they get the rest of their benefits? And then do you suggest like, what would be your most hours a month? Like, don't do more than 2, because you might get an employee that likes to learn and then they're gone all the time in training classes. So like
all the time. Yeah. Those are really good questions. Yeah, I would tie it into your complete benefits program. So that's what I'll typically do. I'll work with a company. What do we offer? Do you have healthcare benefits? Do you have dental? Do you have vision? Oh, continuing education. And literally this morning I was working on a handbook for somebody. I'm like, here's their continuing education program. What does that look like? And yeah, I would set it up. I would get a sense for the classes. Are they usually a couple hours a week? Then maybe, they can do 1 or 2 classes like that per year because it's 2 hours a week for 6 weeks. So it might make a difference if it's once a week like that or by the month. But yes, definitely put a limit, put some guardrails on it and say, and it's always up to managers' discretion because they can't go to these classes if you can't run your business. So they need to come to you, get approval. Yep, we can cover it because I've got Sam who's willing to work, part of your shift to cover that. And then it works out really, really well. And just keep it, Excel spreadsheet to track it. And it's pretty easy. So yeah, that's a great way to invest in your people. Love it. Love it. And I can't wait until our one-on-one. We're going to come up with even more ideas. So that'll be good. So, all right. Drivers of employee turnover and retention. Okay. Why employees leave? I thought, I'm supposed to be done. Okay. Well, here's the deal.
Our room will stay open for about 10 more minutes if you want to wrap up, but then it will just kick us all out.
It's just going to kick us out. Okay.
Yeah.
For those of you who can stay on, I'm sorry we just kept going, but I love that we had the questions. I think that makes it much more beneficial for everybody because I'm guessing others of you are benefiting from some of those questions asked. So I'm going to go through this real quick. Why employees leave? Okay. I try to give a nice positive. There's a transfer or something. Then I put their boss. That is the #1 reason that people leave a company. They will tell you it's for better pay somewhere else because that's a politically correct thing to say. But the #1 reason, and this has been going on forever, it's their boss because their boss micromanages them when they don't need to, because their boss is a little snarky with the comments, because their boss is rather aloof, because the boss doesn't do anything and expects everybody else to, because the boss is just kind of a jerk. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons, but #1 reason. It's not a great place to work. Remember, we just talked about all the things to do to make it a great place to work. If you're not doing that, I mean, if it's kind of a grungy place and they don't care about me and they're giving me last minute overtime, I mean, dollars of donuts every Friday, they're going to tell me I got to work Saturday. Yeah. Why do I want to stay? Drama and poor culture. These are 2 things that can really get you. I've had people on some of the workshops say, okay, in my job description, can I put no drama? Is one of the job requirements. It's a no drama zone. If you start hearing some of those things, that's back to some of those characteristics you saw, the bad attitude, the term I hate when we're writing a corrective action performance improvement document. But if you're catching wind of it, catch that and nip it in the bud right now. Drama is bad. No career progression. And it's not necessarily that we can get promoted because we don't have levels of management. We have small companies. You don't have come in entry level, then you get promoted to a lead, then you get promoted to a supervisor and promoted to a manager. But exactly what Patricia was asking about with those courses that they can take. I want to learn something that's related to my job, but I can grow in it. And so help them get that so they grow in their job and they get better and they can do more things, because it helps your organization. When Sam calls in sick, they can jump over and do it, and they're growing and they're developing and feeling good about it. So that will engage them. You have none of that? Yep, it's not so good. Okay, here's the other things that you can do to impact your retention. Told you in our last workshop, it starts the first day, even before when you're interviewing. You want to be organized, have a good interviewing and onboarding experience. All the employees know that the new employee is showing up that day, and it was all organized and structured, and you have that training program and you're checking in with them, you know, in the beginning of the week. Competitive pay. This is always a tricky one. You don't have to pay the most. Some of the highest regarded companies, when Gallup does their surveys about the most admired companies, they are not the highest paying, but they do all that other stuff that we were talking about. There's job security, because I'm forward, future looking, and my employees know it. The employee recognition, you're meeting with them, you're touching base with them, you're telling them they're doing a good job. You have public kudos if people are comfortable with that. Not everybody wants you to call them out in front of everybody, even if it's positive. You know, so I was going to ask, but you can just kind of think of it, you know, what are you doing to recognize your employees? So just think about this right now. What have I done in the last week to recognize every one of my employees, either at a one-on-one meeting in front of everybody, a handwritten thank you, you know, a Chipotle gift card, whatever that looks like. And then provide growth opportunities. And again, that's not necessarily promotions. It's growing in your knowledge and your competencies and your capabilities and your confidence in yourself. So I just went really fast. Any questions? Sorry, I hate it when I run late and I'm like, really fast. Okay. Oh, and that's it. That's what we got. So anyway, this will come out to you again. I know we did that really fast, but we kind of weaved a bit of that in, you know, with the other discussions that we're having. But it's really up to you. It's hard. I'm not going to say this is all easy, because you're busy. You're working on your business. Some of you are working in your business. You have new clients. You have potential customers. You have growth. You have different opportunities. You have COVID and things that keep overlapping. Pick one area and say, you know what? I want to get better at the employee recognition. If you want to pick one, this is a really good one. I am going to make sure that every week, maybe every day if you can, but if not, one of it can just be a quick thank you. But, you know, take that time to really tell them, you know what, you did a really great job here. The customer came back and told me this is really fabulous. So here's what I'm doing. I had one of those COVID like interaction positive with somebody. I'm like, oh shoot, you know, I've been exposed. That's what it is. So trying to find a place to get tested right now in Johnson County, a new hotspot in Kansas, is a little difficult, but I found one on Sunday and they squeezed me in. And it was this really efficient operation. I mean, it was down to the science, and they got through it all, and I was negative. So I'm like, yay, I can go back out into the world again. And I've enough time has lapsed. So, you know, I probably don't have it. But I went and asked, I said, what is your name? And I found it was the two young ladies' names who were just like, boom, 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 boom. Haven't actually sent it yet, but I have these thank you cards that I have out sitting here, and I'm going to write it, and I'm going to write the thank yous to them, and I'm going to write to the owner of the clinic, who, by the way, emailed me at 9:17 on Saturday night to say, oh yeah, you emailed me earlier and we'll squeeze you in tomorrow. So I'm just letting everybody know it's a urgent care clinic down in Gardner. So go there if you need to. But anyway, those are the kind of things when people go above and beyond, or they do things, or even these two, they were doing their job, but they did it fabulously. Make sure you tell them. Now, I was a customer doing it, but you can do the same thing for your employees because people just don't do that. And when you do it, they're amazed. I do that quite often. I'll find out somebody's name, like, Michelle, what is the name of your supervisor? And she'll be like, oh, why do you want to know that? I'm like, I'll send her a thank you for what you're doing. And they're like, oh, okay, good. Same thing for your employees. It goes a really long way. So now I'm really going to stop.
Okay, I'm going to end the recording, and then I've got a couple of just cleanup things.